What's up, everybody? It's CPUSA here today, and have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what is a hero? Who is a hero? What does a hero do? Well, that's a question I've kind of been asking myself for the past 3 or 4 hours leading up to the recording of this video. And for me, a hero is someone who, in the face of an overwhelming wrongdoing, an overwhelming evil, stands up and says no. Stands up and does something about it, even when it's not popular, even when there's a fear factor involved. A hero is someone who does something good against something bad when no one else can or will. That's what I think defines a hero for me. And one hero that I think right and left we can all agree upon in American history, and sadly probably the only one that we can agree upon right and left in American history, is Martin Luther King Jr. I don't think anybody is going to come out and say Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't a hero. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't do something extraordinary, because he did, and everybody knows it. The odds were against him, and he accomplished one of the greatest feats in American history. And what sets him apart from perhaps any figure in the past, other than maybe Christ himself, was that he did it without violence. He never preached violence. He never called people to take up arms. He never called people to attack his enemies. He never asked anybody to be violent toward anybody. All he wanted was peace. And he preached radical peace in the face of radical hatred, radical evil, and actual systemic racism. And he won. It cost him his life, but ultimately he won. He is a hero. Unfortunately, he's the only hero that we can agree upon today. All of the left's heroes are disputed, and all of the right's heroes are disputed. But the one we all seem to share is Martin Luther King Jr. Now, let me ask you this. What does Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy look like? Well, in his time, it was one of success. Ultimately, for me at least, it's one of failure. I mean, look what the black population has overwhelmingly embraced these days. Hate. But that's a topic for another time. But Martin Luther King's success is his legacy. Martin Luther King's peace and love for everyone unconditionally is his legacy. And his legacy is the civil rights movement. His legacy is making black people and people of color equal to white people in our society. Of finally getting rid of Jim Crow, of all of the racism and all of the trash that was in our society. Obviously, not all of it's gone, but most of it is, although the left is certainly trying to bring it back. Now, compare that to the left's greatest hero nowadays, and I'm of course referring to George Floyd. And I'm making this video because today is the 1-year anniversary of his murder, his suicide, his unfortunate being in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong thing. Whatever you want to call it, the jury's still out on that, and I think that jury is not the jury of BLM, which is what got Derek Chauvin convicted. It's the jury of the American people. And there may never be a clear answer as to what the charge against the cop should be for Floyd's death, or if Floyd took his own life, if Floyd would have died from the fentanyl, or if the cop killed him, or if the cop expedited the process. Maybe we won't ever have that answer, and maybe that's something that everyone just needs to accept. But one thing is for sure, Floyd is treated like a hero on the left. I mean, obviously, look at the pictures I found just searching George Floyd anniversary. Obviously, this is the kind of stuff you do in remembrance of a hero. You know, heroes would usually get this kind of treatment. But is Floyd a hero? Well, let's look at his legacy over the past year, I think we've seen hopefully just the beginning of his legacy, and hopefully the worst part of his legacy, but we have seen his legacy start to play out. And it is not one of a hero. What's George Floyd's legacy? Well, this is his legacy. There's a police station burning down in the background. Compare that to Martin Luther King Jr. Would he have condoned this? Would he have ever asked anybody to go and do this? Would he have ever supported it? This is George Floyd's legacy. This is George Floyd's legacy. This is what his legacy looks like. Now ask yourself, is this one of the radical peace that Martin Luther King would have wanted? Does this help anybody other than criminals, other than a political party? Does this further America? Does this help anybody other than politicians and criminals and people who just want to go and destroy stuff and don't actually have a reason to do it? Well, now they have one, because a black man was killed by a cop. And nobody actually wants to look at the circumstances. Nobody actually wants to have the debate of whether his death was justified or not. Again, like I said, we'll probably never have the answer to that question, but nobody even wants to stop for a second and think about the question, and this is what we get. This is George Floyd's legacy. Look up 2020 riots on Google and you'll get something to this effect. Bloody hell. You'll get something to this effect. To this effect. Something like this, something like this. Now, I want you to stop and ask yourself, is this what the legacy of a hero looks like? Or is it something out of the Joker movie? Does this look like something a hero would condone? Does this look like something that a hero's legacy should look like? Does this? Does this? Does this? How about this? How about this? Maybe any of these? Or maybe this? Anybody see anything in here that looks like it would be part of a hero's legacy? Really, is anybody seeing anything? Comment. Does anybody actually see anything worthy of the legacy of a hero? I certainly don't. But nevertheless, it's what George Floyd's legacy is, or at least is right now. I certainly hope that it changes to at least something peaceful. Sad reality is that it probably won't. The sad reality is that George Floyd's legacy is one of being used to further a political agenda on behalf of terrorists, on behalf of people who would rather do this than address the simple question of was the death justified? Well, maybe it's not a simple question, and like I said, we'll probably never have that answer, but these people don't want to talk. They don't want to engage in a conversation. They don't want George Floyd's legacy to be that of a hero. They just want an excuse to tear this country apart, and other countries too. Proof of my point right here. Today, on the day that you would think would be just for honoring the guy, today, in the one place on earth where you think that it would be peaceful in honor of someone who the left treats as a hero, in veneration of him, you'd think it would be peaceful, right? In the spot where he was killed, you'd think it would be peaceful. You'd think they'd have at least that much respect. You'd think they'd treat his legacy as though it were the legacy of a hero. But no. Dozens of shots exchanged at the George Floyd Memorial today. And it's not like one or two.
Timeline that the White House and US President Joe Biden had. They wanted this bill of comprehensive police reform to be... just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
Some gunshots. That's 3 already.
Excuse us.
Probably up to like 8 there. Somewhere around 13.
It sounds like gunshots. I'll let you know what this is. These seem to be gunshots.
Get down!
But wait, there's more.
Shit, where is that? We're okay. We're just gonna go.
Let's go. Down.
So based on the footage I've seen, I'd put the number of shots somewhere between 25 and 30, maybe 32. And they don't sound like they're from a small gun either. Actually, a running theory that a couple people and I have over YouTube and Discord is that they're actually multiple shooters, because if you really listen closely, it sounds like a suppressed AR and a 9mm handgun. I think there were 2 different shooters that exchanged gunfire. Now, the details of this aren't necessarily known. It could have been a cop firing at an attempted mass shooter. That's entirely plausible. Then again, there aren't any cops allowed into this area because it's the autonomous zone that Minneapolis has allowed to exist. We've all seen this video of the 2 thugs telling the reporter to get lost, otherwise he'll be lynched. And this list of radical demands, racist demands against white people in particular. Now let me ask all the liberals who are going to see this, or all the independents. Is this the legacy of a hero? Does this look like something that Martin Luther King would have agreed with? Does this look like something that Christ would have agreed with? Does this section in particular look anything like that you'd see in the legacy of a hero? Certainly doesn't to me. And unfortunately, that's what the left has made George Floyd's legacy, one of unchecked hate in the face of peace. Not peace and inclusion and diversity and all that good stuff in the face of hate. It's the complete opposite. They don't want diversity, they want exclusion. They don't want inclusiveness, they want segregation. They don't want peace, they want anarchy and destruction and civil unrest and absolutely everything involving America to be burnt down and destroyed. This is what this man's legacy is, through no fault of his own. So let me ask everybody, is this really the legacy that you want Floyd to have? Is this really what you want George Floyd to be remembered as? Is this how in 50 years you want your grandkids to look in the history books and remember George Floyd, the man who sparked years, probably will be years, plural, of death, hate, division, chaos, and destruction? And not the man who his remarkable sacrifice, his selflessness, helped create peace and prosperity and a better world for millions. That's all I have for today. Stay armed and stay safe, Patriots.